Right, I'm just admitting the late arrivals. Won't keep you a second. I see everyone can hear me okay. My ear's going crazy with people beeping to get in. So we're currently up to 35, although I did have 100 booked, so I'm assuming some late arrivals. So what I'm going to do is carry on in a second. What I'm probably going to do actually is turn off the waiting room so that people just join straight in. And I don't have to doesn't like I can disable the waiting room, so I'll have to deal with people as they arrive. Anyway, you've all arrived on time, so thank you very much. Please, everyone can hear me. I see them. So wave at me just to say that you're all good. Right, brilliant. Okay, so we've got an hour together, and in that hour, I'm going to give you a brief introduction to using a software called OBS and how we can live stream that. Sorry, I've got a live stream going on in the background that's in my ear, so I've just turned that off. Okay, right. While we're waiting for everyone to arrive, let me kick off with a quick poll so I can get an understanding of your knowledge and see where we all are. So I'm just going to launch the poll now. Fairly simple questions, and it'd just be great to know your experience and a bit about you. So when I launch into the presentation, I've got a bit of a handle on who I'm talking to. If that's okay with you? See if everyone can see the poll. I've got some people voting now. Excellent. So 42 people online, 25 votes. So I'll let the poll run for another 20 seconds, and then we'll close it automatically. Okay, so 86% of you have voted. I'll move on now. So I'll close the poll, and I'll share the results. So by the looks of it, the vast majority of you are in person or remote speakers. Some of you are trainers, educators, facilitators. 3% coaches or mentors. 1% event organizer. Most people seem to be using Windows 10, although we have a balance of Mac users as well. Most people would describe themselves as a beginner rather than a novice or familiar. We've got a few people who are confident, which is good. And majority of you have never used OBS, Minicam, XSplit, Ecamm, or similar. Some of you are sometimes, and one of you is often. So that seems like a fairly good cross section. So we've mainly speakers, or educational trainers, which is good. Most of you use Windows 10, and I'm a Windows 10 user myself. So a lot of what I'm going to be talking about today will be Windows 10 orientated, but where possible, I'll make sure I include enough knowledge. So for those of you using Macs, and I'll talk to you about some restreaming and stuff as part of this session. Okay, so let me close that window down and pop up. So I'm currently using OBS to show this image on the screen. So you're seeing me with a virtual camera with my virtual background in a window, and this is kind of like scene one. What I'm going to be doing today is taking you through a number of scenes which I've pre-created and recommend that maybe you want to have a set of scenes, and I'll talk to you about what a scene is, what the source is, and how plugins and scripts go into that as well. So again, try and cover as much as we can within the hour. But it is an intro, it's a high level, and if we want to just deep dives, we can cover that maybe at the end if we have time. So let me just show you another scene. So you probably all saw the going live one at the beginning, where this is what I had in hold before we did the. I set this up for the live stream. I've got my second scene, which is just me. I've got my windowed scene here, where I have access to sort of like a picture-in-picture, and then you can see me at my desk. I've got my two monitors here. I've got my second laptop here. I've got some lights. I've got my Stream Deck, which I'll talk about as part of this as well. So this is kind of the setup I have. Not suggesting that everybody needs to have all this tech. I've also got a projector up on the wall, which is showing as a third screen, which means I can put my PowerPoint presentation and other things up there so that I'm not sort of overlapping screens. So having more screens does help. I suggest if you're not using it already, maybe swap to speaker view so you can see me in full screen rather than the gallery. If you've got me in a window, that might not help you see what's going on. So if you can swap to the speaker view and then probably spotlight me in the middle so that I appear big, if you haven't done that already. So this is kind of my setup. Got lighting, got laptop, screen, second laptop, which I've got the Zoom running here, just checking what you can see over the side. And I've also got my Stream Deck, my mic on a stick, and I've got my iPhone mounted on a tripod behind me, so you can see a different view of me as well. I've also got a webcam in my laptop, and this laptop, but I won't be using this today, but if I wanted to, I could bring in extra cameras, extra mics into this if I wanted to. But that's kind of the basic, one of the scenes I use. I also have another scene which I use here. Let me turn off that iPhone camera. So here I've got, so my virtual PowerPoint presentation in the window. I've got my windowed presentation, one of these, and I've also got a kind of a mini me. So if you just want to appear as a talking head in the corner, you can have that sort of look as well. One thing I am aware of is that Zoom scales down the virtual camera quite considerably. So some of these words may look quite quite difficult to read. And I'll show you how you can get around to that a bit later on. But for the time being, I'll talk to you about how to set up OBS as a tool to create these basic scenes. So adding a PowerPoint presentation, adding you as a virtual webcam in the corner, or however you want to structure that. And I'll even talk about how to do things like bottom third, so we can have flyers coming in, social media logos, subscribe now buttons, and that kind of effect. Okay, so seeing nobody wave and shout, that's fine. Someone's saying they can't hear me. Can you all hear me? Can people hear me? Yeah, I've got stuff in the chat saying people can't hear me. Anyone not hear me? Good, you can all hear me. Brilliant. Okay, right, crack that. Right, so let's fire up OBS. So before we start, let's share my screen back out so you can see my screen and you can see what I'm seeing. So I'm sharing my master screen here, which is the one right in front of me. And you can now see what I can see on my screen. So this is my Zoom window, which we'll get out of the way for the time being. Okay, oh, can't minimize that, so let me get that out of the way here. Hang on, let me stop that share. For some reason let me cancel these down. Pop that out. Pop that one out. Right, okay, now I can share. Good. Right, now you should be able to see the window in front of me, and I can just confirm on the other screen there that I can see that as well. So let's look at the OBS interface itself. Okay, I've lost my screen. There it is. Okay, sorry about that. So this is the OBS software. This is the interface you see. So we have our scenes at the bottom here on the left. We have our sources. We have our audio mixer, and we have some controls here for streaming and studio mode. And we've also got a set of controls here for scene transitions. And so what I've created so far is built up of these various sections. So this is what we're trying to achieve by having the various views and be able to swap between the scenes. And you'll see that I can control all these different scenes just by clicking the mouse, and also using my Stream Deck, which I mentioned, I can control these using keyboard macros. So that's what we're trying to achieve. Let me go back now and take you through. So what do we need to do to install this? So I've created a text file, which I'm going to share with you at the end, and I'll put it into the comments in the YouTube link as well. So what we need to do is we need to go to this link here, which is where you would download it. So OBS project. You would then pop that into your browser. And this will take us here to the OBS Studio. And from here, we can choose our operating system, either Windows or Mac, download it, and this will then save it onto the hard drive. And currently we're at OBS Studio version 25.08. So if you download and install that, run through the setup as you would with any other Windows program or Mac program, and then you'll be left with the software installed. Before we fire it up, we also need to install some other plugins. One of them is the virtual camera. So unlike Manycam and other software, the virtual camera doesn't come installed by default. So again, I've got a link here for the one for Windows and one for the Mac. So in here, we can go in here and put the link in, and this will take us here to the download page, where we can then pull that in and download the virtual camera. Again, once we've downloaded that, we can double click, install it as we would another Windows program. So let's progress down there. I also use these stream effects, which is another set of add-ons, which again, I've included a link, and I'll talk about where I've used those in here. I'll come back to the rest of the links as we come through it. So that's what that's going to do is we'll have installed OBS, we'll have installed the virtual camera, and we'll have installed some special effects. And that will give us the basics of which we need to get going. So we now go into OBS. Yeah, people got Lavelo video quality. is that a general thing, or is it just a couple of people? Because at my end, it kind of looks okay. Okay, good. All right. I'll keep an eye on it. I've got my eye on the chat. It's in a different window, so it is in my eye line. So if I don't get to straight away, I am keeping an eye on it. So we now have OBS installed. We've now got our OBS installed. We've got our virtual camera installed. So we've got our virtual camera here that will appear. And this is how we would interface with it to start with. So the first thing we would do is we'd go into settings and we would go through to configure a few things. The first thing I would suggest is you turn on advanced mode here. I can't turn it on at the moment because I'm already broadcasting, so it won't let me change some of these things while I'm broadcasting. If you've got a graphics card, you would make sure the encoder is set to the hardware, the H.264. If you're streaming and you want to do a reasonable level output, I recommend at least 6,000 kbs if you're going to be streaming 1920 by 1080. If you want to get higher quality, then maybe even 8,000 or 10,000, but you need to do a network test to make sure what level of stream you can achieve. Someone's saying they can see my Facebook page. Thought I'd turn that off. Okay, so keyframe. A keyframe is when we transmit frames, every so often we need to send keyframes from things like YouTube and other streaming software. YouTube recommend setting a keyframe interval to 2 seconds. Again, most streaming software will tell you the keyframe interval. If you're in doubt, leave it set to auto. You can leave that to auto or a 0. But YouTube, I know, like 2. Preset for quality. You can, that's a balance where if you've got low level connections, you can tweak it to be for lower levels. Leave the other, I've left the others as is, but, and you can also change the scaling. So if you want to stream at a lower speed, sorry, a lower resolution, you can tweak that down to, say 1280 by 720 or a different res, but I've left that set so that my input and my output is scaled the same. We then go into audio, and here we would set our default. So I've got mine set to go through the audio into my headphones, and my mic is pumped in via this as well. At the end, I'll talk about RTX and the RTX voice, which I use for noise suppression. It's an AI voice suppressor, and I'll talk to you a bit about that. But that's where we'll configure our speakers and our microphone. I pretty much leave the rest of it as is. Again, you can scale our output. And in here, we can set hotkeys, but we won't have a lot of time today to go through exactly how to create hotkeys, but we can create a hotkey for almost every scene and every source. So we can use keyboard commands to turn things on and turn things off or switch between. So when we're presenting, we haven't got to keep grabbing the mouse or we can click. We can just press key sequences or program something like the Stream Deck with hotkey macros for us. Again, in the advanced, I pretty much left this as default. So apart from maybe just tweaking the audio settings, making sure you've got your output set right and the stream quality, that's pretty much it. I'll talk about how we can set up a restream to something like Facebook Live or using Restream or LinkedIn Live, etc. I'll come back to that later on in the program. Okay. So that's kind of like the pre-set up. And then we're now looking at creating our first scene. So at the moment we've got our going live. So let me create a new scene. So this is going to be our demo scene. So as you can see at the moment, we've got a blank screen. We're starting from scratch. And the first thing we need to add is our camera. So here we can go add, and we can off the list. I appreciate that's quite small. It's not easy to read for some people. In here, we would pick our video capture device. In our video capture device, we would say we can give it a name. So this is my webcam or something. We can create my webcam. And in here, we can pick our webcam. So I'm going to pick my other camera, which I'm going to do that. I've already got this set up. So if I pick my other webcam, I can pick up an existing one I've created already. So I've already created one for my other webcam on my laptop. So this is me on my laptop here. So you can see I can bring another camera into this. I can now scale that window as I wish. It's quite grainy because the webcam itself, it isn't high quality. It's the lighting's not great. But you can see I've got a green screen behind me. I've got a glorious beach towel covering the windows to stop the light coming through. And again, you can see my Stream Deck and my iPhone there, which I've been using to stream the other pictures. So we can bring in multiple sources from various different places. But let's just say that's so I'm quite happy with me there. I want to sort of scale me down. I can drag that around. I can also crop that window a bit. If I don't want to see all of this other things going on here, I can create that. So I can kind of put myself in the corner of the window now. And let's say now I want to sort of bring in a PowerPoint presentation. I can add in a display source. So I can capture my display. And I already mentioned that I've got a projector showing. So I can bring in that projector display, which, as you see, I've got the infinite mirror. So if I choose display 3, that's my projector window, which is on the wall there, which is my going live. And I can just rearrange the order of those and drag that beneath so that I'm appearing in the corner. Of course, what we really want to be doing is using some sort of green screen effect to bring in the front-facing camera here and tweak this. But I'll do a bit more of that in a minute. But that's how we create our first basic scene. We've got a bit of content, either a shared screen or we've got a camera if that's what we want to do. What else I've done here, let me take off the display capture and just put that in. I can also add a different sort of source. So I can add a color source. If I just want a plain background, I can create a plain color and I can pick the color I want to have in here. So I can just have a nice yellowy orangey color and that'll be my background source. And I can just bring that to the back there. So I just let some more people in, some late arrivals. So again, without having to create any graphics, I can create a solid color source if I want to. I can also bring in other backgrounds. If I wanted to bring in, say, what else have I got here? I could bring in a window. So if I just want to bring in something I'm sharing, let's just say I want to bring in PowerPoint. I can bring in a window, create a new window capture, and from here maybe look, I can share the participants list. Or I can share my Stream Deck. So this is the window of my Stream Deck. So I can pick up an application, anything I've got on the screen, I can share out. I can also share out the group chat. So anything that's a window on my machine, I can bring in at this point. Oh, I thought I had the text pad open. Maybe not. For some reason, not let me bring that one in. Anyway, so you can see I can bring in a whole load of different windows or sources, depending on what I'm trying to achieve at the time. But that's my demo deck, and if I bring that onto the first slide, I can bring in my slideshow. Why isn't that showing? Okay, I'm now confused. I'm confusing myself here. Where's that coming from? I seem to have got a window there that I can't figure out where it's coming from. Bear with. Let me just minimize that. For some reason, I seem to have a spurious window with that going live soon starting, which I can't for the life of me figure out where it's come from. There it is, that one there. Right, okay. So now I can that's for some reason I've got this confused. I'm going to just try that one more time. Window capture, display capture, display number 3, which is my projector. There we go. Right, so I've now got my PowerPoint presentation off my other window, and I can step through that as I would any other PowerPoint presentation. I'm actually using my Stream Deck as keys for this. So if you can see here in that bottom corner, I can bring that into play there. So here I've got my key macros set up on my Stream Deck, so I can use next and previous to step through that. I can go to the first slide or the last slide. Again, I probably won't have time to go through all of that with the Stream Deck, but I can come back if we've got time at the end to show you how to set that up. So that's basic controls. It allows me now to sort of create this scene for you, better share this into the window. But as you've probably already noticed, the quality of what I'm sharing isn't great. It can be quite grainy when I'm using my virtual camera. So if I stop the share, my virtual camera now is showing. So, and you can see that if I'm trying to get onto some text, it can be a little bit grainy and can be a little bit. So what you can do, if I go back into the screen share, and share that back out again. It's a lot. So some people are saying it's really, really great. The Stream Deck is hardware. Again, I'll show you that. It is an add-on product. You're getting notifications. Yeah, it's because I'm unfortunately what I'm doing is I'm sharing my desktop, and I can't stop all of the sounds coming out. Otherwise, I'm sharing within a share. It's really hard to do a demo when you're trying to share the effect of what's on the screen and broadcast at the same time. So I'm sharing what I'm using to create some of the features. So what some of you have seen is this virtual camera display is quite grainy. So what you can do is you can actually create a windowed scene. So I can now create a window on my desktop here, which is the broadcast. I can now use Zoom and stop sharing my camera. I can just literally share that window. So I can just literally share that virtual projection. So that you should see is clearer, because I'm using the virtual window I created through OBS and resharing effectively like a projected window. That means that you're not having to you're going to suffer the graininess. And you can do this within Minicam. Minicam itself has a preview window that allows you to sort of keep up what it will look like. And again, within Zoom, you can share that preview window, which gets you around the limitations of Zoom. And one of the limitations of Zoom is, if I go into Zoom, home, if I go into the Zoom window here, which I'll reshare my main screen. If I can find the buttons. I've got too many things going on here. Yes, it is possible to have too much on your screen. So I'll reshare the main screen now again. Right, so I've now got the Zoom desktop application open. In here, if you go into settings, you'll see there's a statistics page. On the statistics page, you can see the screen res that it's transmitting the video. So my camera is being transmitted 640 by 360, and I'm receiving your video at 256. So that's, bearing in mind a standard screen is 1920 by 1080. That's being constricted down to a quarter of the size. But if you look at the screen share statistics, that's sharing at 1280 by 720. So I'm getting almost HD res out of my screen share. So this is why you can see the text in higher resolution through a screen share than you could through just using it as a virtual camera. So what I recommend you do is, if you're not actually displaying text, or text doesn't matter, you're just literally using a picture of yourself. So if I go for this, if I go for that main screen, if I turn off the screen share, then how do I turn off? I've got way too many screens open here and way too many windows. So my screen share here, that's quite fine. So you've got a great view. The video res, it doesn't matter about my face. It's only when we start looking at trying to look at content that you'll notice it starts to get grainier. And the smaller the text, the harder that is to read. You may find you can get away with it, but you can't really predict the other end. So I'm sure some of you are having a reasonable experience based on your bandwidth, but some of you are probably having terrible experience and finding that text almost impossible to read. Someone's asking about Minicam and the Mac. Zoom did block virtual cameras on the Mac application, I think until last weekend. The latest Zoom client update for the Mac has re-enabled virtual cameras so that it should work. And OBS and this software does work on the Mac as well. If I didn't mention it, OBS is free. The virtual camera interface is free. And everything I've shown you today is at no cost. You just download it. It's installable. It just comes down to your time and effort in order to be able to configure this. So this session really is, again, just to give you an appreciation of what you can achieve fairly simply with that. I say fairly simply. I mean, you may not think it's simple, but fairly straightforwardly, given some free software, a bit of time, effort, and patience on your part. So that's, I'll stick to using the screen share for the time being and not keep popping into the virtual camera because it's quite difficult for you to read some of the elements of the screen. So I'm going to go back to the OBS window and share the entire screen again. So share my entire screen. Okay, so we can now see the files. Someone's asked about the file size of OBS. Let me have a look. Let me bring up my downloads folder. Where's that? Downloads OBS. Here we are. So if we look at file size, someone's asked the actual OBS Studio is 71K, so it's not huge. Virtual camera add-on. So with all of the add-ins, less than 100K for the lot, which is not a huge amount of space. If I'm honest, you probably need more space for your graphics, your video, your PowerPoint presentations, everything else. But that's the basic kit. It's quite a small download, really. Okay, any other questions? Someone's mentioning Touch Portal. Yes, there are other ways of controlling OBS. Again, I've got OBS itself has a way of bringing up its own display. So if where's the settings? So there's something called multi-view. So I can bring up a multi-view window. And this brings up as I could display containing all my scenes. So again, if I had a production desk, I could swap between the scenes literally by clicking on the regions of the screen, and you can use that. So if you had that on a separate monitor, rather than having to reach for the keyboard or something, you could have that on a separate screen, and just be able to select the scene you want from that screen itself, which is again quite useful if you want to be able to do that. The Stream Deck also has an interface which you can use on the iPhone or on another screen if you want to do that. So I can pop up my Stream Deck interface, which I've got here somewhere. So I can control this using a web browser as well. So I can bring this up on the screen or access it to my phone if I wanted to. But again, I don't want to go off on too much of a tangent because I'm conscious that we want to try and get through as much as we can. So this is kind of, so I was going to cover the basics first. Talk about the lighting. So I've got a reasonable quality mic. I'm not saying it's the best quality mic in the world, but it kind of does the job. It's a newer NW 800. Again, I can give you links to all this, and I'll pop it out in the chat afterwards, or send it out as an email with the links to all the downloads. I'll send it all out at the end of the session, so that you can see the sort of stuff I bought. But I do recommend good lighting, reasonable webcam. I use a Logitech C920. this is a newer microphone. I say it's not the best. It does the job. It's reasonable quality. If you're an audiophile, you may think it's actually not up to it. You might want to buy a Rode or a Blue Ice or something. But for £25, you get the entire kit, and it's certainly good enough to start. So we talked a bit about installing OBS with some of the plugins you'll need to get you going. When you install the virtual camera, you will actually need to turn it on. So if I stop the virtual camera, you'll see that the window goes blank, and I need to restart it again. So you have to remember to either leave it as auto start or remember to turn it on and off each time. Obviously, the issue with keeping it running all the time is that you can't use the camera for other applications. If you wanted to just use your camera in Zoom normally or other application normally, you need to stop the OBS cam, and then you'd be able to pick a different cam. So I can go back into Zoom now, and I can choose a different camera from my Zoom window. Don't know if you can see me there. I can now pick my other camera there, and for some reason it's not letting me do it. Anyway, let's not confuse things. Let's have one plan and just go with that. Right. Let's go back to my Zoom. Right, back to that one there. Okay, so important to remember, always start your virtual camera if you want to use the virtual camera in Zoom or something else after you install the add-in. This virtual camera option here will only appear once you've installed the plugin, either in the Mac or the Windows version. Okay. I appreciate I'm really rushing through this, and if everyone's getting lost in the technicalities, then please do let me know. I am live streaming this to YouTube, so you're most welcome to pick that up and watch it back as many times as you like. OBS is version 25. They do seem to release new versions every couple of months. Certainly updates as they find bugs. It's a community project. It's open source. So there's a whole community out there maintaining this, creating plugins. And if you go to the OBS Studio site that I showed you at the beginning, then you'll find loads of help, loads of support in there that you can post questions as well. Can you record to a file and live stream? Yes, you can. So in the bottom section here, on the right-hand side, I can stream. I'm not streaming from OBS today. I'm streaming from Zoom. The reason being is if I close OBS, the stream disappears. So I wanted to make sure that we were streaming on a different machine, basically, a different window. I could record everything that's streaming and recording locally. So I can create a backup copy. And I think that's great practice. If something goes wrong, you have an internet connection failure, I think recording locally is a great idea. So make sure if you are going to stream, you do record locally as well. Right, what am I going to do next? So I've created some scenes. I've created like an intro. I've created a webcam. I've created a webcam in the corner with in this one here, you can actually, I don't know if you can see, I created a little, like a virtual TV. So I created a border, and if I open my window up again, I've got a folder here. One thing I strongly recommend is you create a folder, a file, whatever you call it, that you're always going to leave in the same place. Because when you create these assets, which you're going to bring into OBS, it references the file. So if you move the file, you lose the reference. So always make sure you create a structure where you can find things and they won't move. So in this particular case, I've created a folder for graphics, and in graphics, I've put some various sort of elements, frameworks, etc., etc. So I've created a video border, created some other things. So you can see here. Oh, it's white, can't see it. Some reason I can't see it. Where has it gone? Virtual TV is in there. Why couldn't I see that? Trust me, when you're hopping around everything, it's worth having a bit of discipline. Otherwise, it's easy to get lost. So what I did is I've created this cutout. I actually just used PowerPoint to design this. I just created a couple of rectangles. I used the border style to make it look like there's a rim and an inner edge. And then I saved that out as a PNG file. The PNG file means you have the transparent background. So we want transparency so that when it will shine through. So that's what I did. Is I created this frame, which I then brought in here as a source. literally. So that's my, I could turn it off and turn it back on. So you can see if I turn that off as well. So you can see I've just created this virtual TV frame. Right, yeah. So that's just the basic frame which I created. So I did an add source here. I created add image. In that image, I added in. I picked the file from my folder. Bear with getting a trouble with technical demos. So I just bring that in as a folder, as a file, and once I've got that in, I can then highlight that. I can bring it. I can move it around the screen, put it where I want to put it, and there I place it there. I can resize it if I wish, and then all I literally did then was I brought in my virtual display, the window I captured. So I brought that in, and from there I can then combine the two. And then I just line them up so that they kind of sit right. And I move that one. And just line those up, and I can use the arrow keys as well, just to tweak it. So that gives me that kind of picture-in-picture look, rather than. But you can, if you want, just literally project the PowerPoint into a window there. You don't need to mess around with all of that extra stuff as well. And then I create another scene. Really, again, just if I wanted to appear in the bottom right-hand corner, I can move myself around if I'd rather be on this side, if I'd rather be a bit bigger. I don't have to be. I can shrink myself. I can lay the scene out with how I want to see myself in this window and rearrange things. Any questions on that so far? Teams, yes, Teams. You can use a virtual cam within Teams. I've used Crowdcast. I've used Teams. I've used Hopin, and I'll talk to you about the green screen next. So green screen is the next one I'm going to do. Why do I prefer OBS over Minicam? I use Minicam. I pay for the license, and one day I just played with OBS, and I found it more extensible. Extensible is the word I would like to use. It allows me to do more. It allows me. I actually found it used less resource. It was less resource intensive. I found that Minicam was using far more CPU and resources than OBS. That's anecdotal. I've got no. I didn't do extensive testing. I just found that from my own experience that it seemed to use less resources. I can bring in multiple sources. I'll show you some other stuff, some clever stuff in a minute with NDI and some other things about bringing multiple camera sources in and sharing iPhones, etc., which I don't think you can do with the Minicam and some of the macros. Yes, Minicam is a good bit of software, but I just found it took me so far. And then there's just stuff I'd like to do differently or have more control over. The other thing I liked about this is I can create multiple scene collections. Minicam, you almost have your 9 or 10 basic scenes which you create. And if you want to do something completely different, you have to delete them and then create something new. Then you have to delete this. There's no way of backing them up and restoring them. Whereas this, I can create multiple scene collections for different purposes. So I've got the live one, the one I normally use when I'm working. I've created this scene collection purely for this demos today, and I've got a different scene collection just for when I do streaming that has different setups in it. So it means I can sort of segregate what I'm doing. I can have some test zones, I can have some play zones. And if I want to do some branding, maybe I'm working for another customer or I've got specific branding I want to use, I can duplicate my main scene here. Oh, okay. I click the button. Bad move. Let me. That was You can get a bit mouse clicky, can't you? So I clicked on the wrong one there. Let's bring it back to where I was. Okay, back in the room. What I can do is I can duplicate this, and if a customer wanted branding, if I wanted to do a different branding, I can set that all up and just bring that straight in. I can flip between them. So again, you haven't got to keep destroying and recreating. So that's one of the things I like to. Right. So let's talk about green screening. Let's go back to my main webcam here. So I do have a green screen, which I'm using, as you saw from the other window. And what you can do is you can apply filters to a source. So I'm going to go into my camera and look at the filters I've got set. There are filters there. So in the filters, I've got various green screens. So that's my green screen. And what I can do is here I can click plus here and add in a chroma key filter. The chroma key filter, I add it in, create it, and I can just default. So by default, it does an average job. It's not brilliant. It's got a bit. You can see it's got some sparkly, some browny bits in there, and I can tweak this, and I can tweak it and just adjust that filter to try and create it so my hair doesn't break up. And it's, I'll be honest, it's, if you haven't got perfect light, and I haven't by any means got perfect light, I need more lights on my green screen. I need more control. I've got light leakage coming through for the window here. And I do fiddle with this extensively because depending on which time of the day it is, I get different lighting. So I have to play with the green screen. So one thing I found is you can stack green screens. So what I do here is rather than, so I take it kind of to the limit, so it just about doesn't break up. And then I often find there's a patch to one side where it's still a bit grainy in one corner. So what I would then do is I would add another green screen filter and say, okay, I will then change the color to custom and select a color. And here I can pick from the screen. So I can now pick an area of the screen here that's not quite been got. And I can now tweak that to hopefully pull it up. I mean, that's not a good example. I shouldn't have done. That's definitely a bad example. So what I've done, I'll show you the ones I've pre-tuned earlier. So this is my kind of layer one, which does a pretty good effect, gets rid of most of it. That kind of does the heavy lift. Then I bring in a second one, which has got a slightly different green, and I enable that, and that picks up some of the corners that are maybe a slightly different color. And then I keep narrowing it down, adding another filter until I get to the point where I've kind of got rid of all the sparkly bits, and I don't end up with extra bits in here or extra bits in here, and the hairline's not too bad. So it is a bit fiddly sometimes. It's not perfect because my lighting's not perfect. If you've got great lighting, you've got the green screen set maybe 6 foot behind you, and the green screen's lit separately. You've got real control of the lighting. It'll be a doddle, a real sitch. But if you're like me, where my green screen is literally 1.5 foot behind me, I'm really too close, and I haven't got separate lighting on the green screen. So I'm going to always have to have this compromise with how good the effect is. So I just know now that I'm going to have to allow, say, 10 minutes at the beginning of the day to tune my green screen to make sure I've got the best conditions. And if the sun comes out badly at lunchtime or heavily at lunchtime, I'm going to have to retune a little time in the afternoon. So that's how I use the green screen. But we can also do other things with masks. Let me show you some other things as a quick interlude. Oh, the grid. Let me show you the grid. So one thing you should always try and aim at is when you're thinking about laying your, we've got some late arrivals coming in. We've got some, we always want to try and make sure our eye line is held as high as in the top third. So we think about thirds. We've got middle thirds and top and bottom thirds. So what we want to try and do is keep our eyes at around that level there. So I just have an add-in. I've got an image source for the grid, which means I can just sit here and go, well, yeah, I'm in the right place. My eyes are in the right place. I'm perfectly positioned. And if I want to move myself up or down again, I can just drag myself in the window to try and line that up. So that gives you the kind of the best angle when you're looking at the screen, is to try and keep yourself in that, your eye lines on that third. The other thing I've got here is some things like, this is some extra things. You can do fly-ins. 10 minutes, we've got 10 minutes to go. So I've created these effects, and this is a social media auto switch, and I've put the link to this in the comments. And what it allows me to do is it allows me to stack all my lower third fly-ins. I stack them all as video inputs. Then I set a 25-second delay between each one, so I can just leave this on a loop now. And every 25 seconds, the next one on the list will fire in. The other thing I've got is I've got a YouTube. Oh, I can't see that. I've been playing around again. Let's bring that back in. Let's so I can a transform is something that I can do to edit the dimension of the screen. So I can center things, I can edit things, I can fit them to screen. And where's that gone? Okay, I can't find it, so I'm going to give it one more chance and then hit the screen. No. Oh, I've got to turn it back on and off. Right, so there it is. Okay, I can't figure out what's going on with that. I'll try and demo that in another window in a minute. There it is. That's the one. So if you're doing a lot of YouTube work and you want to pop up a subscribe button, again, you can create this. You can download these. There's sites that will have these as downloadable images. We could just download the MP4 file. Anything with a transparent background, you can bring in. And I'll quickly show you how I created some of these things myself using PowerPoint. I've got PowerPoint. I'm sure many people have got PowerPoint. I'll show you how you can do something very simple to design all these lower thirds, all these fly-ins using PowerPoint. What else have I got here? This, you can also bring in web sources. So one thing I've designed here is there's a website called webcaptioner.com, and it allows you to do live web captioning. So if I turn this on, I can now caption as I'm talking. It's not fantastically 100% accurate, but as you can probably see now, it's pretty good. It does a good enough job if you want to live caption your talks as you go, to say if you come back to this later. And I think it's kind of, yeah, I mean, for free as a plugin, you can just bring this straight into OBS as a browser source and use it. So when I talk about browser source, again, we've got plus here. We bring in a browser and we create a browser source. And here we just put our web address in, and for our web address, we then bring that in. So let me just edit this one here so I can show you what I've done to use this. So I brought in this webcaptioner.com. So you log in, create an account, and you set it to auto start, and that's all you need to do. Set the screen res. This custom CSS, without getting too technical, if you delete that, it allows the scroll windows to work. With that in there, it deletes all the scroll windows, so you can't scroll. So that's one thing to remember. So, and then all I've done is I've tweaked it. I've let's turn it back on. The little padlock stops you fiddling with them, which is quite useful. So I can crop the window using the Alt key. If I Alt key and click the red, I can crop that. So you can see on the screen there, that's the scaled window. I can bring that around. I can move that how I want. So all I wanted to do was I wanted to just tweak out the bottom bit. So I crop that bit out there. I bring that top bit down here. So I've got 3 lines. And I just position it. I can right click on that and I can transform it to be horizontally centered. And there we have the web captioning sort of live in the middle of the screen, which we can use as we wish, which goes straight onto the stream or straight into the recording to save you having to go back and do it afterwards. And I say, it's good enough. It's not fantastic, but it's pretty good. As you can see what I'm talking now, it's keeping up with me. As long as you've got a decent microphone, no background noise, it does pretty good. Okay, so let's turn that one off. What else have we got here? We've got, so I can bring in, I think I showed you earlier, I can bring in my other sources via the windows. I've got streamed it there. I've got my phone. I haven't got that turned on, so I won't use that one. Right, NDI. Let me talk to you about NDI in the last couple of minutes. This is kind of advanced stuff. So NDI stands for, in fact, I can't remember what it stands for, but it's something that it allows you to transmit video and audio over the network. So I can have various NDI sources. So I can have a laptop, I can have IP cameras, and what I can do is I can bring them in to OBS as another source. So I've got an app on my phone, which is currently free. If you search in the App Store on Android and iOS for NDI, November Delta India, yep, November Delta India, you'll find something called as an NDI camera and sometimes an NDI sharing. So if I just pop out my camera here, you can, there we go. This is, I've got this, so if I have the software here, I can now use this as a roaming type mic. If I wanted to say zoom in on some of my kit, I can put a tripod on it. So if I wanted to have some handwriting, if I wanted to, if I'm doing a demo and presentations, I can I can create something so that I can have my little virtual flip chart, or I can actually have a flip chart and have it zoomed in on a particular area. So just by using the iPhone I've already got, I have another camera source. So I'll just apologize for coughing while I'm muted. bad people, not muting yourself. So NDI. So if I go into the properties, I've had to install this NDI plugin as a separate item. And again, it's in here. I've created this NDI here. So you have to put a plugin to allow it to fit into OBS. And then you have to install some tools. And the tools allow you to do lots of great stuff. It's beyond the scope of today. But if you're curious, it's worth having a play with NDI as a source. But all I did to get this to working today was install the OBS plugin from there. Just click on it, install it from the obsproject.com, and then install the iPhone app. And that's all there is to it. So if I can also receive from my laptop as well. So by using the NDI tools, I can make my other laptop another NDI source. So I could share my screen, I could share my webcam, so I can bring lots of things in. So if you imagine you're running an event and you want multiple cameras, you can use the cameras you've already got. Or if you wanted to have people with roaming cameras, maybe doing one person behind the stage, one person in front, and you could then mix and match those cameras in OBS, create a scene, create some kind of mosaic, and you could bring people in, bring people out, and hop to the different cameras. So you can quite quickly see how you could be your own one-person production studio just using this kind of software. All right, let's turn that off so I can rest my hand. Right, what else have we got here into the... So Restream, this is the final thing I'm going to cover to try and hit the 1 hour deadline to respect your time. Try and bring this to a close. So if I'm looking to stream here, it's got the start stream option here and the start recording. So if I want to stream, what I can do is, let me just make me a bit bigger. I feel a bit happy if I'm in the middle. Right, so I can now go into my settings, and in the stream box here, I can select event. So if I want to use Facebook Live, I want to use Twitter, Periscope, YouTube, I can do it directly from here. I use Restream.io. I use the free account, which is what I'm using to stream this via Zoom. Literally, if I said disconnect and reconnect, I don't want to do that now. I don't want to mess anything up. So if literally when you go in here normally, it will say connect account, and that will walk you through a logon process, and that will take you in to the Restream. So you see what I've done there? I've now brought in the Restream as a browser source. So you can now see what have I done there? This is the danger of not locking the content because you can grab the wrong window. Right, so it's just moved me out of the way into the corner. So it's moved me out of the way down here. So this is now the live Restream. This is you can see here. Actually, what I'm doing, this is what's streaming to YouTube live events at the moment. So that you can see I've got this YouTube live event turned on, and I've gone in from here. I've actually streaming from Zoom straight here now. So I'm showing you now the Restream dashboard. In Restream, you can actually create a LinkedIn live source, a Facebook source, a YouTube, a standard YouTube, or you can use YouTube live events. Again, going into YouTube live events is probably too detailed for today, but I'm happy to do more sessions and follow up if you're interested in streaming. And you can stream to Twitch. A lot of gamers stream to Twitch, and you've also got Periscope, which will take you into things like Twitter and other platforms. And all I do within here is I start streaming. I just turn this on. It knows how to log on then into Restream.io, and it appears into here. And what I then need to do is activate the sources of where I want it to go, and it starts blasting it out. So if you were to go into the YouTube live stream event now, you'd see what was going on here, and you can monitor what's going on. I can interact with it. So if I bring up the interaction window, I can now click on various parts within it, and I can see the stream health. I can see where I've obviously had some dropouts here. I'm not sure where that was. Maybe I had less content on the screen, but I can actually see the stream health where I'm doing. Right, so that kind of takes us to the end of the hour. So out of respect, I don't want to go on any longer than I have to or want to for you. But if you could think of anything you'd like me to cover, maybe if I wrap it up now, I'm happy to stay online for another 15, 20 minutes if anyone wants to be around, anyone wants to ask questions, I'm happy to open it up for Q&A. So if I stop sharing now, and I'm happy to go into a Q&A now, and just put that back to my master and close that down. So okay, so that's kind of the end of the presentation. I appreciate there was a lot of technical stuff in there, and this was really kind of a what you don't know, now you know kind of stuff. You can now be curious, you can now ask some questions, and this is the beginning of your journey. So people are asking, where do you get the links? I will paste in the notepad I had into the comments of the YouTube live stream. And if you haven't got a link to that, that was in the Eventbrite link you would have received in there. If you scroll to the bottom, past the link for the YouTube, sorry, past the event for Zoom, go to the bottom, you'll see the live stream. And I will, in fact, what I'll do is I can quickly paste it into the, if I go into the YouTube here, I can paste the YouTube live event link now into the comments, save you haven't done for that. Yes, it is a lot to take in. Yes, it is. And I appreciate that many of you, maybe this is quite technical for some of you, and I appreciate that. So here's the live event. Let me just copy this stream for you. So let me paste the stream into the chat. So the stream, that's the YouTube live event. I'll just paste in there, and I will paste the as soon as I close this down, I'll go back into the live event, I'll edit the comment, and I'll paste all the links into there, so you've got the downloads, and you can always watch this back as many times as you like. I do plan on running a follow-up, depending on what particular areas people want. I'll send out an Eventbrite survey, sorry, brain's gone to sleep here. A Survey Monkey type survey, probably this afternoon. If there's anything you'd like to follow up on, put it in there. I'm more than happy to run another session or 2 or 3 next week. If anybody wants some consultancy, I'm happy to oblige. If they want some more help one-to-one, I'm happy to do that as well. Obviously, some of that would need to be charged, but for some of this kind of stuff, I'm more than happy to sort of do some community spirit stuff. Enough people have bought me a coffee to make it a good use of my time and your time. So more than happy to work on a coffee basis if anyone would like to contribute. And you're also welcome to go back into the Eventbrite, buy me a cup of coffee now if you wish. So yeah, I'm not gonna say no, but I do drink a lot of coffee. So right, are there any questions? Yeah, so Ross says, would you mind reaching out after the fact for some more advanced things once I fiddle a bit with overlays? Yeah, please do. Go and have a play. If you find you get lost, you can either catch me on Facebook or you can catch me on LinkedIn. Reach out. Yeah, as I say, I'm happy to do some community sharing. But obviously, appreciate. Yeah, if it's consultancy, I'm happy to do paid consultancy as well. But for pointers, I'm happy to give you pointers, and work for coffee. Cool. And again, if you want to do live events and you want some help producing some production, happy to talk to you about that. Someone's asking, how essential is it to have a stream deck? It's not essential to have a stream deck. It's just another one of those. I liken it to being one of those performers outside a tube station in London, where they're trying to play the guitar. They've got the big drums on their back. They've got the little cymbals between their knees, and they've got everything going on. Or like Rick Wakeman with keyboards, you've got them everywhere. And what it is, when you're trying to present live, as you've seen today, when I've got so many things going on, different windows, it's very hard to maintain composure. So anything you could do as a presenter to minimize your fiddling, to minimize your looking down, looking away, is one less thing to cause you stress. It means you can now focus on the audience. So with the Stream Deck, I've got it set here, so I can just push buttons. Yeah, I'm just literally pushing buttons on my Stream Deck here to just move that out of the way. So I can push these buttons to change scenes. Oh, it's all backwards. So I can just push that button there, push that button there, push that button there. So I can very quickly do that. I can even just turn the cameras off and on, the grids on. So I can program these keys to do a whole load of things. And I've also got some macros that allow me to control PowerPoint without having to look at the keys as well. So it's got one of these little raised middle keys, so I can feel that with my fingers, and I know that the one to the left, one to the right is it allows me to control the scene. So yeah, I can program a whole load of functions into this, and it's very, very extensible. But you don't need one. You can do all the keyboard macros if you wish. But one thing for you late stayers, if you're say feel free to dash. I'm just going to carry on talking until the last person's here, so I'm happy to keep sharing for a bit. I use something called RTX Voice. Let me show you this. I love this. Let me share my screen again. This is bonus features. This is director's cut stuff. This is right. So I have a swanky laptop. I've got a laptop I've got is based on the Intel i7 9750H chipset, which has an NVIDIA RTX graphics card. It's the 9th generation Intel, so it's not this year's, it's last year's. But it's to give you some perspective, on a speed rating, it came out at 3 to 4 times faster than my previous laptop. So it's significantly better. If your laptop can't cope, if you fire up, so on Windows you could fire something called Task Manager. So let me pop Task Manager into the share for you. Where's that gone? Too many windows. Right. So you'll see here that you can see OBS Studio at the top, which is the main program. That's using about 20% of the CPU, and it's also using 6% of the graphics processor. With my old laptop, this was kind of maxing out at 80 or 90%. And once you start maxing out your CPU, what you'll find is that you'll get audio sync issues with your lips, or you'll move and you'll stutter. And if you're trying to zoom, stream, and record at the same time, you'll find that you'll end up with a real bottleneck on CPU, especially if you've got browser sources. It's worth doing a Control Shift Escape. If you've not found Task Manager before, you just press Control Shift Escape on a PC. Not sure on a Mac, but there is something else. A couple more questions. I'll come back to that in a sec. So yeah, it's very important to think about the CPU usage, which is one of the reasons I swapped for Minicam, is because I found that Minicam did actually use more CPU than OBS. Again, that's anecdotal. Your mileage may vary, as they say, but do keep an eye on that CPU. And if you're having a poor experience with Dropbox, I've got Zoom open, I've got everything open here. If you're having a really poor experience, then consider investing. So this laptop cost £1,500 from Amazon, which is comparable to the laptops we probably carry around as speakers, the ones our Apple AirBooks, etc. We're probably paying £2,000 or £3,000 for some of those. So I bought this as a desktop replacement. So the intention was to leave it on my desk at home. Even if I do start traveling around the world again, it means I've got a home studio. I can set it up with a monitor, external webcam, and I know that I'm not going to run into a problem now with my laptop going to a halt. So I think having the right kit in that respect, it is worth investing in a good laptop, good webcam, and good lighting. And you may not need the green screen. Right, where was I? Oh, this. Right, so the RTX Voice. This is the voice element I was telling you about. Right, so this is the NVIDIA. It uses AI to enhance noise or reduce noise reduction. So if I don't know if you can hear this. I'm going to turn it off and see if you can hear more hiss. So that's turned off. I don't know if you can hear more hiss in the background, more noise. If I re-enable it, someone says way more, yeah. Oh, it's so this uses AI and the processor within the graphics chip on my RTX NVIDIA graphics card to do the voice processing. There is noise reduction within OBS if you right click on an audio source. Okay, for some reason that's not working, so I'm going to have to. Right, okay, so it's back on, and I'll put my headphones back on now. Okay, so let's. What am I sharing? What am I sharing? Let me share my desktop again. Again, I've got too many windows open. Let's bring OBS back onto the screen. So if I can apply filters, this is my microphone here, and you can see the input levels. When the noise filter's turned off and I'm not speaking, you get a background hiss around the R, the T there. The other thing this is good at is if I stop talking and click my mouse, you can't hear my mouse click. You could hit, I think you maybe heard the first click, but it actually optimizes out each of the clicks. And you can also, it should optimize out. So when they, so it is, I mean, I found myself, when I'm on Zoom calls, I'm trying to change screens, I'm clicking on the mouse, I'm hitting the keyboard. And what I found was people were picking up on that. So I was very conscious about the noise I was making in the background. Whereas this noise filter is quite intelligent, and it will optimize out a number of those kind of things. One thing I didn't show you is masking. So you can create a mask if you wish. And the other thing that I've also got in here, another filter, which is quite cool. So this is the image mask. So all I do is I apply a circular filter to that, and I can now create like a cutout. So if you don't have a green screen, what you might find, so if I turn the green screen off, if I go to the filters here and turn the green screen off, so I don't have a green screen, I've got a normal background. By creating a mask, it sort of minimizes the what you get in the background. So I don't feel so self-conscious about my background because I've got that. What you may have noticed also is I've got this thing called face tracking, and if you see it, it's actually moving with me. So as I move, it tracks my face. Again, this is another feature of the NVIDIA card. Where's the filter? So I've got this face tracking app here. So I can now track my face, and I can choose how much I zoom in. So if I literally, it'll follow my face as I move. Where this becomes useful is if you are doing cropping, like and masking like this, it means I don't move out the circle. It's going to catch up with me. So it means it can be far more tolerant of me moving around in that window. And I could be more generous, if you like, with my movement, because it's always going to keep me centered at it. Whereas if you haven't got the face tracking turned on, what you'll find is you'll just disappear out the side. It can look a bit spooky and a bit kind of a bit weird, but you may find an application for that where that works for you. What else have I got here? I think I've covered all that stuff. I think I've covered all that. You saw that there. That was just literally the face tracking locking back on again. You see it just zooming in and finding me, which is again quite good if you want to say if you want to maybe crop the video down. You can preset the zoom, so wherever you sit, it knows to lock onto your head and shoulders, which is quite good. RTX download. I'll put a link for the RTX voice download. Again, anything I've talked about downloading, will all be in the web links, which I'll post under the YouTube chat. Okay. So we've still got 14 people watching. So is anybody want to ask any more questions? Happy to take any more, or I'm happy to stay here until, well, for the next 5-10 minutes if anyone's online. Where did you adjust the green screen? Okay, so happy to go back into that. So I find my source. So the webcam is my source. I can't. It's quite long, Clinton. I'll post. I'll send it. What I'll do is I'll send it as an email from Eventbrite, so you'll all get a copy of that. As soon as I hang up, I'll do that. Okay, so you'll all get a copy from there. So in order to put a green screen on, so you right click on your source. One thing to remember is that sources here are duplicated. So this webcam here is the same as this webcam here. But I can scale it and treat it differently. So if I make the green screen adjustment to this one, it applies to the other ones as well. So let me go onto here and right click, filter. Filter here is where I add my chroma key filter. I can just enable that one. And as I said earlier, that this is where I stack them, where rather than try and over tweak, you get to a point where you can't quite get it so that it works. I can kind of stack them, and then so I haven't got to bring each layer down to the point where it destroys what you want to keep. So I tend to use the stacking literally to allow me to sort of pick an area of the screen that isn't quite keyed properly. You can, if you've got great lighting, you can get away with just one key. But I found that I think if you've used Minicam allows you to kind of tweak the green screen and pick different regions, which is where I kind of got the idea from. So allow me to sort of so again, if you look at the green screen itself, you can see it's unevenly lit. I've got a dark patch in the bottom here, and it's lighter here, which does confuse the green screen software. So you almost like have to green screen for the corners and green screen for the center, which is how I do that. Right, we've got another question here. How did I create? Right, okay. So I've ran out of time, but I'll show you this now. So if you want to see this. This is how I created the lower thirds in PowerPoint. I'll go figure out where I left it now. I saved this PowerPoint somewhere. Now, where was it? No, it's not there. Right, let me go to PowerPoint and just look at my projector on the wall. So if we just bring this in. Bear with. When you've got 3 screens, it's kind of a bit of a nightmare. Open. Right, so this is where I created the lower thirds. Right, so we've talked about green screening a video camera. We could also green screen our graphics. This is literally all I did. So I used PowerPoint to create various different sources, different slides for each one. And in here, I just used green screen to create the effect. So I used PowerPoint animations. So you can see the animation pane here. So if I play all, you can see I bring in. So group 1 is my eye logo. I bring that in, as you can see here, with a wipe, so it appears, and then I rotate it, and then what do I do then? I bring it again, faded. I think might be some duplicate stuff there, and then I wipe in. So the way I do this is that's my eye, and then I create 2 rectangles which just appear out. So if I just play that from there, you see it just brings it in, and I just set the timings up so that it they appear, that appears first and those appear from underneath it. And I literally just wipe it out. So again, with PowerPoint, you can create some kind of nifty kind of effects. And then what I do at the end is I just reverse the sequence and unpack it back in again. And from here, what I do is if I unhide that slide, there may be an easy way, but this is the way I did it. So you keep the slide you want to save out, you hide the rest. And I just go into here, save as, pick MP4 as the output type, give it a file name. That then writes it out. You can see it writing out on the bottom. Takes a few seconds, create the MP4, that's done up there. And if I now go back into, here's my testing one. So this is what it looks like if I play it. Wrong screen. Let me just get the right screen up again. So if I bring this into VLC, which is just a media player, oh dear, a bit of a mouse trouble here. So I bring this in, open it up, and you can see here it keeps maximizing the screen for some reason. Always fit. That's what it's set to. So you get the gist, and then it folds away. So I've now got that as a scene, as an MP4. I can then go into OBS, and I can bring in my media source. Where is it? Media source. So I'll create a new one, and I'll browse, and I'll go into my video folder, and where's my testing one? That's the one I just saved out, testing. I can set it to loop if I want it to keep going round and round circles. I can restart as soon as I make it active, which is what I normally do. So as soon as I flip onto it, it starts it from scratch. I hide it when it finishes, and I normally close the file afterwards to save memory. So that's how I've normally set it. So you see there it is. And then all I do now is I right click on that, go to filters, add a chroma filter. And because this green is kind of perfect, I can just leave that as default. And now when I disable it and then re-enable it, it green screens out the green. And it's kind of as easy as that. You haven't got to learn After Effects, Adobe Premiere, or do anything. I believe you can do this kind of thing in Canva or other things. So you just literally overlay what you want to do on a green screen, animate your heart's content on PowerPoint or whatever animation tool you prefer. You can even do stop animation if you wanted to. You can create a whole deck of slides with a transition between each one to do stop scene type animation. The way I did I spent a long time. You probably imagine I spent many hours on this. It became a labor of love. So this is my subscribe one. And I use a whole load of animation techniques. Again, all this is in PowerPoint. The only cheat I did was this, the drop down there. I screen grabbed YouTube. I actually screen grabbed what happened when you clicked on the subscribe button. So I didn't draw that out separately. And what I do is I use these two shutters. So I created this chroma mask. And if I just put a border on it, you'll see what it's doing. So if I put the border, so you can see it in action. Right, so that's my mask that I bring in. So I turn that on. And what you see now is if I play that, you can see that border moves, shrinks. And then it does this. And then it just reappears and covers it up. So again, I'm just using, and I'm animating a mask just to bring it into play to cover up the base, the bottom layers. And by making it appear and disappear through movement, it creates that animation effect just by shrinking that. One thing I found, the reason I did that in the end, which I'm actually more pleased that I came to that conclusion after a lot of trial and error, is that when I tried to do that effect using animation on the image itself, PowerPoint creates this edge, a faded edge as it drags the curtain away. Because that edge it created was non-linear. It's kind of graduated. It really messed up the green screen. So I ended up with this green shadow going across the screen, and I didn't want that. I wanted a really clean line. So I found just by using a really clean animation of that wiping the is it a wipe? What filter did I use? I was a collapse. A collapse filter doesn't have any smooth edges. The wipe filter has that curtain effect, whereas this is kind of a real fixed line. As you can see here, if I play that again, it doesn't create that overlap. So, and I spent a bit of time messing around with the timings so that it held things on the right point. The mouse, I just drew the mouse, and then I used the animation for you've got custom path animations, so you could do motions, you create a motion. So I played with that and got the mouse to move the right place. But spent some time working on the length. I dare say if you're familiar with something like Adobe After Effects or some other graphic design tools, you could do something far more professional. I found this quite for me. I didn't need to learn any other tools other than this to do these animations. Again, very similar. I spin that in and pop it out, and again, if I use that, if I just pop the an outline on that so you can see it. So if I now animate that, I just literally move the box out of the way, then I just pop the box back. So again, not trying to do too much clever, just using masks and simple spin effects to achieve what I'm doing. I've played with different versions where I had the actual graphics themselves moving around, and I found that really complex to try and get layered animations on one object, whereas this just comes in, goes out. It does all the heavy lift really in one object. And I didn't need to use complicated move paths. I just literally, what did I use here? That was a fly in and a fly out. So I start by flying out and then just bring it back in. I didn't need to use a move path and dragging arrows around trying to get things to line up. I just, and I can, if you wanted to, you can even choose the direction of the move. You can bring it top and bottom. This one here is a fly in, a spin, is it? That's a spinner, and it just spins in, spins out. So yeah, that's how I achieved the. The other thing you need to think about is if you wanted to use a green logo. So if you want to have a telephone one, obviously if I chroma key that out, it's going to chroma key the green in the logo. So you've got to be very careful about the colors you use. So what you can do is you can use a different background and chroma out blue instead of chromaing out green. So what I've done in OBS is on the where is it? So this one here, that appears. I use a chroma key that's on this one is blue. So I use a blue chroma key. So a bit of trial and error, working out which colors. You may have to tweak the chroma keys. You may have to adjust them slightly. But if you pick a fairly neutral blue and a fairly neutral green, you can Google chroma key colors in Google. That will give you the Pantones. It will give you the colors to pick. You'll get a hex code which you can enter into here with the hex code, and you can paste that straight in. So yeah, a bit trial and error to make sure you don't overlap. The other thing I had to do in order to make this work, let me just put that back. The other thing I had to do to make this work was these logos were transparent. So I ended up having to create a black version that sat behind it. So I just literally put a black version so it wasn't too transparent. Otherwise, it was the green screen was bleeding through. So again, you may have to just play with a few layers here to achieve the effect you're looking for. Oh, can you see? Yeah, you can see me, can't you? Right, let's go back to the chat window, see if there's anything else. So Edward says can't get your chat on because you can't get your camera on because you're using OBS. Okay. Where did you make your mask? So in the masking, the other thing I did in PowerPoint was I created another deck. Here, and again, when you're masking, you create a black outline, and everything in white is what shines through. So that's how you would mask. And if you wanted to do a multicolored, you could have a different sort of mask. So if I go back into my OBS, into my masks, so that's my round one. And, oh, there I go. It takes a little while for the face tracking to kick in. All right, where's the masks? As you can see, if you're not careful, you end up with too many things going on. All right, so is it on here? So if I right click, you can actually right click on a source as well. So you could apply the filters to not only the source but also the scene, which means that any source I have in my scene takes the same mask. So if whichever camera I turn on here, so if I turn my beach towel on, that one there. If I turn my if I webcam, no, it's not gonna lock on. Okay, I'll give up on that. But yeah, you get the gist. So by applying the so what I'm looking for, yeah, apply the mask to the scene. That then takes everything on it. So in here, I've got my circle. If I change that to my hexagon, I just create a hexagonal mask. I can change that to a diamond, etc., etc. And you can create all whatever shape you want, as long as the bit you want cut out is in white and the bit you want to obscure is in black, and that will create the mask. If you want to get, you could do a bit more design around that. I've played with this thing. If I can find it. So this one here I call Cameo. So you can see I put a little border around me. It doesn't quite line up. I'd need to just play slightly with it. So the mask, I just need to move that around a little bit within the window. So that's turn the grid off. So I've now got a me in the background, which I can if I put a web page up, it gives me a kind of again if I didn't have the green screen, it means I can sort of minimize the noise around me. And just appear as a window, and I can mask out other things if I wanted to. I can also mask part of a web page. So if I wanted to bring something in, I can use mask for various things and add them onto a source. So I think we're down to our last four. With the last one who leaves, tell me. Otherwise, I'll be sitting there for half an hour talking to myself. So I think that's probably. Just myself and Edward left, so I think I'm happy to call it a day now. So yeah, if you love this, tell your friends. Joanne Lockwood, See Change Happen. I'm more than happy to accept coffee as a donation. So thank you very much for your time.
Can you hear me, mate? I don't know.
I'll wrap up the stream now. So thanks very much.
Yeah. Thanks, John.
Bye.